SOC2.
Binkul Hamid. So, Mayor Karen, let me park all the other questions. Let's start with this session because in this topic, you're going to get a lot of information, I'm sure, which you guys have some questions. Just under what's the relationship between COSO and SOC2? SOC2 ke jo, again, I can let me jump into this session straight away. Otherwise, we'll be moving around the same thing again and again. So hopefully at the end of this topic, most of the questions will be answered, but then yes, if you have any additional questions towards the end of this topic, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. So the next topic is the trust services criteria. As I said, जो SOC 2 framework है, that is built on TSC, which is called trust services criteria. Trust services criteria basically क्या है? It is based on 5 principles कह सकते हैं आप. It is based on 5 foundational pillars कह सकते हैं आप इसको. So these are the 5 basic trust services criteria जिसके ऊपर आपका पूरा SOC 2 का framework built up हुआ है. So it is based on the security. जो first आपका criteria है, that is called security. As the name says, security means how we are going to protect our sensitive information from unauthorized access and unauthorized disclosures. The second criteria is your availability. Most of you, I'm sure, who are in the security background, they know what availability actually means, like how we can make sure information is available to the right people at the right time. So that is your availability criteria. The third one is processing integrity, which is also called as PI. This is not PII, this is basically an abbreviation of processing integrity, which means how we can maintain accuracy and reliability of data processing. Number 4 is confidentiality, how we can ensure our information remains confidential. And last but not the least is your privacy, how we can secure our personal information.
Welcome to Global Information Security Society for Professionals of Pakistan.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. A big hearty welcome to everybody. We are doing the session after a very, very long time. There was a big gap, and this was mainly due to my laziness and some other logistic issues as I was talking to Mr. Adnan. So, Alhamdulillah, welcome back, guys. Inshallah, Ta'ala, I will try my best that we keep doing this every week now, every Saturday, inshallah, same time. We try to fix the time and try to get more speakers, inshallah, Ta'ala. So, inshallah, now, first of all, there's a very, very good response on the registration because we are only given a 1 day notice, and still we got like 50 plus registrations. So that was, it's very, very, what can I say, like uh, encouraging and very pleasant that people still want to learn new things. And this section is a bit different. Most people may be thinking it's a security operations center session with the word SOC, but this SOC is different than the SOC 2 is different than normal SOC. So I'll not take much time here. We'll just start now, and I will hand over to Mr. Adnan. Just to let people know, Hafiz Adnan is a very energetic professional and very experienced trainer. He has trained many of our guest members on a very nominal prices. Also, he is very like he has done 2 more sessions before for us before, which I will share the link in the chat in a while, so you can see his old sessions also about ISO certification and other stuff. He does the training and he also does the auditing part also. So I will let him give some time to introduce himself and start the session. Over to you, Adnan bhai.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shazagway, and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you very much, Shazagway, for your kind words. To start with, yes, सबसे पहले तो मैं कोशिश करूँगा because I think we have participation mostly, from our community. So कोशिश ये होगी कि I make it a more of an English-Urdu session. But I'm pretty okay if everybody wants me to do only English. क्योंकि उर्दू में पूरा session करना मुश्किल होगा because ये terminologies, they are very much English word, but जहाँ जहाँ possible होगा, I try to make it a combination of Urdu and English. As Shazagbe said, this is a SOC 2. It's a compliance framework from AICPA. So those of you who are expecting I'm going to talk about Security Operations Center, probably this is not the right session. इस session के अंदर we are just going to talk about कि जो security जो SOC2 है, which is from AICP, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, what exactly this compliance framework all about. So उसका overview हम basically करेंगे. So let me quickly go through the agenda. We talk about SOC, SOC2, SOC1, जो हमारे पास different AICPA के frameworks हैं, उसका I give you a quick overview. SOC2 के अंदर जो SOC2 की बेसिक्स हैं, जिसको हम ट्रस्ट सर्विसेज क्राइटेरिया कहते हैं, TSC. We are going to talk about TSC as well. What are those 5 trust services criteria, plus if we have any additional categories. So this is what we'll talk about as well. A very, very important thing which we try to cover in this session is SOC2 keep mapping with other industry frameworks. So I'm sure most of you must be familiar with ISO 27001. Some of you might have worked on NIST frameworks, to NIST के अपने cybersecurity frameworks and there are many other frameworks. So we try to see what is the relationship between SOC2 and those other industry frameworks and standards as well. Uske baad, a very, very important thing as part of this SOC2 process is how to do the certification and reporting. By the way, iski certification nahi hoti hai. This is again, I would say a sort of gap in the understanding in the industry कि इसकी भी certification होगी, just like ISO 27001. नहीं, इसकी कोई certification नहीं होगी. It has a different wording that we use, which is called attestation and opinion report. So, but again, there's a process behind that. So we try to understand how does that whole process work from end to end. उसमें हमारा roadmap क्या है, and then at the very end, we have a very exclusive offer for those people who are joining today, because we have a training program coming up on SOC2 as well in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So those of you who are attending today, we have a very exclusive offer. As Shazad Bhai said, we have trained more than 100 Gispp members in the last 6 to 7 years, I would say. So thanks to all those who trust in my competencies and knowledge and experience. So again, we have some offers for those who are interested to go for SOC2 certification in the individual capacity. थोड़ा सा मैं अपना introduction दे दूं. As Shazad Bhai said, my name is Adnan. Coming from an Islamic background, I have also done Hafiz, तो वो इसलिए Hafiz भी कहते हैं लोग. This is a bit of my timeline. मैं ज़्यादा time अपनी overview पे नहीं दूंगा या अपना introduction पे नहीं दूंगा. So just a very quick intro. I've been in the industry since it's been like 19 years. So since I graduated in 2005, I've been in the industry primarily in information security and cybersecurity, governance, risk management and compliance, quality engineering, etc. I started doing audits back in 2013 on different frameworks and standards like ISO 27001, so on and so forth. I started doing training back in 2015. So it's been like 9 to 10 years since I've been in the training space as well. Then in 2019, I started working with external certification bodies, just mostly US, Europe or Australia certification bodies. And so I started working with them as the external auditor to do audits on ISO 27001 and other ISO standards. 2022 में I was awarded with the Trainer of the Year. I personally feel this is one of my biggest achievement, because being recognized among 3,000 plus certified trainers across the globe, it's an achievement definitely. Also, we started our own business back in 2018. So we started the company with the name Azan Cybertech Consulting. 2022, we started with another company which is called Cyberverse. Again, we primarily provide all the services which are in the consulting space: cyber governance, audits, assurance, consultancy, and advisory services. So we are not the reseller, we are not systems integrator. Our team is purely involved in the cyber compliance, governance, risk management, etc. So we have worked on different frameworks like ISO standards, NIST have. We provide services on GDPR, SOC2 have. Plus we do have standards and frameworks which are very much country oriented, जिसमें UAE के cyber security laws हैं. We have done a couple of projects in the Saudi Arabia, जो वहाँ के data privacy laws है उसके ऊपर. In Australia, we have done few projects based on Sanctions Act and other frameworks that we have here in Australia as well. So yeah, that's a bit about myself and my company. Yep, as you said, we have got few awards as well. We were nominated as top 100 South Asian innovative companies in Australia last year. I was also awarded with a couple of CISO awards. We were also nominated as finalists for the business networking group that we have here in Australia. So this is a brief about myself and our organization. चलिए जी, next get to the basics. What is SOC? Again, as I said, we should not get confused with Security Operations Center because that's a totally different thing. SOC basically is a framework which is coming from AICPA. It is an American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and they have come up with some frameworks around information security, financial reporting, etc. So basically, they have got 3 different frameworks. जिसके अंदर we have SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. So it's not just SOC 2. Yes, SOC 2 is more relevant to our industry coming from information security and cyber security, but there are 3 main frameworks which were introduced by AICPA. उसकी reason ये है कि as we all know, America, of course, they come up with their own different frameworks. Similarly as NIST, which was started back in 2010, 2011. So similarly, this AICPA, they came up with their own information security, cyber security, and financial processes to improve the security posture or the financial maturity process in your business. So it represents a set of compliance standards, which is developed by AICPA, which is a network of over 400,000 professionals across the globe. The aim is to examine policies, procedures, and internal control of the organizations. And as I said, there are 3 different frameworks which are basically introduced by AICPA. So SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. SOC 1 kya hai? It's more related to financial controls. So organizations or those people who are in the financial industry, if you want to improve your financial processes, you can go and you can comply with SOC 1. So SOC 1 talks about reports on the processes and controls that influence the organization's internal control over financial reporting. This is because the choices a company makes as a service organization may affect the financial reporting their user organizations. Standard assessment report required by user entities to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley Act as well. So SOC 1 is primarily to improve the financial hygiene of your business and of your organization. The one which are mostly relevant to our business is SOC 2. Now, SOC 2 is the one which talks about non-financial controls. And it basically talks about your data privacy and your information security and cyber security hygiene. So अगर आप अपनी company में, whether you are into healthcare or financial industry, whether you are in a bank, whether you are working on a SaaS product, whether you are working into a telecom industry, what you can do is, if you want to improve the security hygiene of your business, SOC 2 is the right framework for your business. Or this is what we are going to focus on in the next 30-35 minutes. The SOC 2 के further आगे classification क्या है? There is a term which we use, which is called Trust Services Criteria or TSC. So what is Trust Services Criteria? उसके अंदर controls क्या है? उसकी categories क्या है? Which ones are the mandatory one, which are optional? So this is what we are going to cover in the next half an hour, 35 minutes. Then we have something called SOC 3. Now, SOC 3 is pretty much similar to SOC 2 in terms of the criteria. Iska criteria almost same hai. The only difference is SOC 2 ki jo reports hain, you can only share based on the request from your customers. So just say, for example, because I do a lot of audits, so let's say I'm coming to perform an audit in your business, and let's say you are using AWS as your platform. So we can ask you, okay, do you know if AWS is certified in, or they have got the right security controls? So what you can do is, you as a customer, as a business organization, you can request AWS to share their ISO certificates, SOC reports, etc., etc. So SOC2 is very much tailored with specific organizations. AWS will send you their SOC2 report, but it is not publicly available. अगर मैं AWS की website पे जाऊंगा, I can't see that report. But if they go for SOC3 report writing, then they can make it public, which you can just go to their website, you can see the report, you can see the findings, you can see the opinion of the assessors, you can even download that report. So that's the only difference we have between SOC2 and SOC3. Criteria is the same, it's just that the reporting format plus the publicity of that report basically is different between SOC 2 and SOC 3. SOC 2 report is very, very comprehensive. Sometimes it takes over hundreds of pages to write the report. SOC 3 is an extracted version of SOC 2 report. So if your organization is already SOC 2 compliant, I'm not saying certified, ये चीज मैंने पहले भी explain की and I'll explain again. SOC 2 की certification नहीं होती है. Just like we have certification for ISO standards. ISO के अंदर, if you guys are into governance, risk, compliance, or if you have gone through the audits, you guys must know that once you go through the ISO process, आपको एक certificate मिल जाता है from the certification body. Like yes, this company ABC is certified. आपका certificate number होगा, उसके ऊपर location होगी, the validity of that certificate, you get a physical certificate basically, जिसको you can hang in your office, you can put it at the reception, etc., etc. SOC 2 के केस में या SOC के केस में basically there is no certification. So you don't get a certificate. अगर कोई certificate offer करे, then that's a question mark on the integrity of that certificate. क्योंकि SOC 2 की certification नहीं होगी. It's a compliance assessment जो हम लोग करते हैं. And basically we share the report, जिसको हम opinion report कहते हैं. So it's not about pass or fail. It's not about X amount of non-conformities, which is the case in ISO 27001. यहाँ पे we'll see the implementation, the effectiveness of the controls, जो मैं आगे जाके explain भी करूँगा, and then we bring our opinion on top of it. Okay, based on the evidence and looking into the controls, what is our opinion in terms of the effectiveness of your controls and your information security program? So it is called an opinion report. उसकी base के ऊपर कोई certificate issue नहीं होता है as such. So again, SOC 2 report, as I said, is very, very comprehensive. SOC 3 is an extracted version of SOC 2, जिसके अंदर we put that information which could be shared easily with the public. So that's the difference we have between SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. I take the questions at the end of every topic. So if you have any questions, you can just take notes, and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions if you have. So what is SOC 2? It's a framework, as I said, system and organization control framework for auditing service organization. It focuses on non-financial reporting controls based on 5 trust services criteria. What are those criteria? That is called your security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. So ये 5 basic criteria जिसको हम TSC या Trust Services criteria का नाम देते हैं. It applies to any organization who basically wants to demonstrate their data security, confidentiality, integrity to its customers, associated organizations, or just to uplift their information security posture within the organization. So it's totally up to the organization. Most of the time it is tied up with the customer requirements, but if you want to improve your information security program in your business, in your organization, you can always go for SOC 2 as well. Impact of SOC 2 across different industries. As I said, your technology providers, SaaS providers, healthcare industries, startups, financial institutions. So it's not specific to one industry or one sector. Any organization who feels that we have to improve our information security program, they can basically go and they can start complying with SOC 2 requirements. Very high level objectives, it basically helps to ensure organization systems are protected against unauthorized access, unauthorized disclosure of information, and damage to the systems. It also helps to ensure organization systems and services are available and operational when required by the customer. It also helps to ensure organization systems accurately process and handle customer data, ensure customer data is kept confidential and protected from unauthorized access, and also it helps to ensure organization collect, use, retain, and dispose customer data by applying data privacy laws and regulations and other organizational commitments. So these are the very high level objectives. But again, as I said, if I have to summarize all these 5-6 bullet points, the whole thought process is okay, how you want to secure your data, your information. So there are many other frameworks and standards like ISO 27001. As I said, I have been working on ISO 27001 since 19 years. I was fortunate to work on the very first version of ISO 27001, which came back in 2005. But this is another framework we have from AICPA. दोनों में difference क्या है 27001 and SOC 2 में comparison क्या है? Again, I have added few slides in the, so you will be able to see the comparison in terms of difference and similarities as well in the coming slide. Okay. Any questions so far? Anyone? Very quickly, just on the overview so far I have given. Anyone? Any questions? No questions? Okay. So,
Adnan, एक question.
Hello. Hassan.
Hello.
जी.
I have one question, please. Hello.
Gigi, please go ahead. Go ahead, Harun.
No, are we going to discuss the mapping between the control, mapping of controls between ISO and the SOC 2, that is basically ACIPA controls?
नहीं Harun, इस session में it would be very difficult. I thought to give a mapping, but then it becomes very much. I think उसके लिए हमें check 2 different sessions करने पड़े because ISO के अंदर again, you know, there are 93 controls. SOC 2 के अपने criteria हैं, they have got their criteria, sub-criteria, sub-categories. So this is just an overview. Maybe in the future we can have a separate session just maybe we can talk about the mapping. But this session maybe we are not going to talk a detailed mapping of SOC 2 and ISO.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
कुछ क्वेश्चन चैट विंडो पे भी हैं लोगों के, प्लीज।
जी मैं देखने दूं। जी हसन।
जी थैंक यू अदनान भाई। मैं ये क्वेश्चन है कि जिस तरह हमारा ISO 27001 के अंदर हम एक स्कोप डिफाइन करते हैं, इट कुड बी एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कुड बी अ स्पेसिफिक सर्विस और अ पोर्शन ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। तो ये जो SOC 2 है ये सर्विस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के लिए जो किसी किस्म की सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, तो इस सूरत में जो हमारा एक स्कोप होता है वो टिपिकल सर्विस होती है या वो भी फुल एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन SOC 2 कंप्लायंस हो सकती है?
We are going to talk about the scope in this section. So hopefully you will get the answer. But you can define your own scope. जैसे हम ISO के अंदर एक scope define करते हैं, you can define the scope here as well. But there's a criteria, there are few factors that we need to consider. So, but इस session के अंदर we are going to talk about those factors and you know, the criteria, etc.
Thank you.
I can see there's a question, the way SOC 3 is extraction of SOC 2, do we have any extraction of SOC 1? नहीं, SOC 1 की कोई extraction नहीं है. SOC 1 financial reporting से related है, उसका मुझे idea नहीं है, I'll be very honest, because I'm not into financial reporting, तो मुझे नहीं पता कि SOC 1 की भी कोई extracted version होता है या नहीं होगा, so probably I'm not the right person to answer on that. उसके बाद which standard do we use in SOC 2? SOC 2 itself is a framework. ये ऐसा नहीं है. So SOC 2 itself is a framework basically. So अगर आप AICPA की website पर जाओगे, you can see a complete guideline available for this one. उसके बाद can we say it supports data governance framework? I ask a question, yes, of course. Again, ये जो section है इसके अंदर you will get more information के किस तरह का हमारे पास criteria. How many controls are in SOC2? So yeah, there are different criteria. Again, you will see in this section, okay, we have criteria and sub-criteria, so probably you will get some answers on that. Is there any certification for consultant of SOC2 same as ISO lead auditor? That's a very good question, Nawazish. There is a certification for those who want to implement SOC2. Uski certification is there, which is called Lead Analyst Program. It's a 4-day program. Inshallah, मैं उसकी भी बात करूँगा towards the end of this session. Now, the question is, if you want to do the external assessment, उसकी सबसे बड़ी जो requirement वो ये कि you have to be accredited with a CPA firm. क्योंकि this is a CPA framework, AICPA. तो आप SOC2 Type 1 तो कर सकते हैं, but SOC2 Type 2 आप नहीं कर सकते हैं. You have to be part of a CPA firm who is authorized to do SOC2 assessments. That is the main criteria. Once you become part of that company, फिर उनके अपने training programs और अपनी आप कह सकते हैं उनके induction sessions होते हैं, which help you to understand how to write the report, for example. लेकिन that is the main criteria. You have to be part of a CPA firm in order to do SOC2 external assessments and report writing. ठीक है. उसके बाद let me quickly go to
एक क्वेश्चन है मेरा, मुझे बताइएगा कि पहले आपने
भाई.
बात की कि कंट्रोल की इफेक्टिवनेस हम चेक करेंगे, तो कंट्रोल्स की इफेक्टिवनेस फॉर अ स्पेसिफिक टाइम चेक की जाएगी और रिपोर्ट में स्पेसिफिक टाइम होगा. उसके बाद ये लिए क्या ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आप कह सकते हैं कि वो फॉलो कर रही है, कंप्लाइट कर रही है SOC2 के लिए, नहीं अगर वो टाइम पीरियड गुजर जाता है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल. सेकंड थिंग इज, जब हम SOC2 के कंट्रोल्स वगैरह को डिस्कस करते हैं तो कोसो फ्रेमवर्क का प्रिंसिपल्स को हम देख रहे होते हैं. तो व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन कोसो फ्रेमवर्क एंड SOC2?
Binkul Hamid. So may I let me park all the other questions. Let's start with this session, because in this topic you're going to get a lot of information, I'm sure, which you guys have some questions. Jiske under what's the relationship between COSO and SOC2? SOC2 ki jo again, I can let me jump into this session straight away. Otherwise, we'll be moving around the same thing again and again. So hopefully at the end of this topic, most of the questions will be answered, but then yes, if you have any additional questions towards the end of this topic, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. So the next topic is the trust services criteria. As I said, जो SOC2 framework है, that is built on TSC, which is called trust services criteria. Trust services criteria basically क्या है? It is based on 5 principles कह सकते हैं आप. It is based on 5 foundational pillars कह सकते हैं आप इसको. So these are the 5 basic trust services criteria जिसके ऊपर आपका पूरा SOC2 का framework built up हुआ है. So it is based on the security. जो first आपका criteria है, that is called security. As the name says, security means how we are going to protect our sensitive information from unauthorized access and unauthorized disclosures. The second criteria is your availability. Most of you, I'm sure, who are in the security background, they know what availability actually means, like how we can make sure information is available to the right people at the right time. So that is your availability criteria. The third one is processing integrity, which is also called as PI. This is not PII, this is basically an abbreviation of processing integrity, which means how we can maintain accuracy and reliability of data processing. Number 4 is confidentiality, how we can ensure our information remains confidential. And last but not the least is your privacy, how we can secure our personal information. So these are the 5 basic trust services criteria, which are basically used to assess the suitability and effectiveness of your information security program within the organization. So these are the 5 basic foundational pillars. So as you can say, for SOC2, for example, in terms of security, what sort of controls we generally implement? This is just a high-level snapshot. Security we generally, in any organization, we get firewalls, we have got our security controls, device की configurations आ जाती हैं. Confidentiality में, of course, we try to identify our protected information, privacy data subjects. Privacy basically means you implement encryption and set the privacy rules. If you have to comply with any specific data privacy law, जैसे GDPR है या UAE के अंदर, Saudi के अंदर, we have got our country-specific laws and regulations. So that basically all falls under this trust services criteria. Then we have availability. That's where we have our business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, etc. And then in terms of processing integrity, we can have controls coming from PCI, for example, or just to make sure that our information remains integral and there are no questions marked on the integrity of that information. So these are some of the controls that we implement in order to improve these 5 foundational pillars. So this is just an explanation of that security. Now, a very, very important thing is out of these 5, and I'm going to explain that in the next few slides as well. The first one you can see here. For all the other ones, you can see privacy is P, which is basically coming from privacy. C stands for confidentiality. PI stands for processing integrity. A stands for availability. आपका ये क्वेश्चन हो सकता है कि यार सिक्योरिटी के लिए S क्यों नहीं यूज किया, right? The reason is, and this is not my abbreviation by the way, this is coming from SOC2 itself. तो अगर आप AICPA की वेबसाइट पे SOC2 का फ्रेमवर्क देखो, this is what they have used. CC stands for common criteria. Common criteria. What does that mean? That means कि अगर आपने SOC2 compliance करनी है, at a minimum, you have to implement the security criteria. This is the basic minimum requirement. अगर security controls नहीं है आपके पास, or if there is a gap, then it's a question mark on the compliance effectiveness. So you have to implement all the security controls which are coming under this particular criteria. That is why it is called common criteria, CC, okay? And this is what it says. It is included in all the SOC audits. It focuses on common criteria and it aims to ensure information and systems are protected against unauthorized access, disclosure, or damages. Availability, of course, talks about the uptime and downtime, etc. This is where, as I said, we have business continuity plans and disaster recovery plans. Basically, you need to make sure your systems are available. So if you are in, if you are a cloud services provider, if you work in data centers, etc., of course, availability is of prime importance. Confidentiality means your information remains confidential. And it encourages encryption for in-transit data security, and it also encourages client certificates and personal authentication certificates. Number 4 is your processing integrity, PI, which ensures your systems and the processing of their data remains authorized. It talks about the accuracy, completeness, validity, and timeliness of the data. And it also talks about how we can achieve the goals and purposes that were designed to achieve. And last one is your privacy, which is the 5th trust services criteria. And as the name says, it talks about your personal data, PII, etc. Requires organizations to demonstrate that they protect and handle personal information securely, and also how you are going to collect, use, disclose, and retain and dispose of your information. So this is the privacy criteria. Now, the question is how to choose the criteria, right? I think this was, sorry, this was also a question, how to define the scope. Just say ISO 27000 के अंदर, we define a scope in terms of logical boundaries and physical boundaries and system boundaries, how we can define or how we can choose the criteria. So as I said, out of the 5 trust services criteria which you have seen, again, going back to the slide, this one, security is mandatory. That is why it is called common criteria. So this is your starting point. This is your starting point. Now, in the security criteria, we basically have 9 subcategories and 32 controls, or you can call criteria basically, or sub-criteria. This is a mandatory one. So this is your starting point. Iske bina, you can't go for SOC2 compliance, as simple as that. So you will start with the security criteria. Now, out of the remaining 4, out of the remaining 4 जिसमें आपकी availability है, confidentiality है, processing integrity है, and then you have privacy, these are called optional criteria. It is not mandatory, it is not compulsory कि आपने ये सब implement करने हैं. You can choose to go for availability, you can go for confidentiality, you can go for processing integrity, you can go for privacy, you can have a combination of these 4, you can go for all these 4. It's totally your choice. But that choice also has some criteria to consider. कि क्या मुझे ये चारों ही, or I have to go for the whole SOC2, yes or no? Or maybe I have to choose 1 out of these 4 or 2 out of these 4. Because for each of these 4 criteria, again, you have got X amount of subcategories and Y amount of controls. Okay, so again, availability के अंदर, for example, we have got another 3 subcategories, उसके अपने आगे controls हैं. And as I said earlier, I'm not going into those details because then it becomes like a 4-day training program, जिसके अंदर we'll be talking about the controls, subcategories, उनकी requirements क्या हैं, how we can implement, etc. So this is not the right platform to talk about it, but just to give you a flavor, that for each of these categories, again, then we have got different subcategories and they have their own different controls. लेकिन अगर आप ये कहते हो कि I have to go for availability, then you have to consider all 3 subcategories. उसमें आप exclusions नहीं कर सकते हो. If the control is applicable, वही the concept that we have in ISO 27001, if a control is applicable, you have to implement, right? So it's the same concept here. If a subcategory is applicable, then you have to go for the relevant controls and relevant subcategories. But this is the criteria to choose, and this is basically a starting point for you to define the scope of your SOC 2 compliance program. Now the question is how we can go for these additional criteria. Kin basis pe we can choose yes, either we have to go for availability or confidentiality or PI or privacy. These are some of the factors that you need to consider. First, of course, your business requirements, very specific requirements. Most importantly, SOC 2 ke andar, we have to consider customer expectations. So for example, if I am running an e-commerce platform, मेरे लिए सबसे important क्या होगा इसके अंदर? Processing integrity, right? I have to make sure that payments that are happening through my platform, that needs to be secure. It has to be accurate and complete, right? But in case if I am in, let's say, I'm running a data center services, probably availability is of prime importance for me because I need to make sure that the services should be up and running 99.999% job as per my promise or as per my service level agreement with the customer, right? Similarly, in case if I am in a hospital, for example, I'm in a healthcare group, for me, confidentiality and privacy is of more importance because I have to make sure that the data, the information of my patients, the doctors, the staff, everyone, everything remains confidential. उनकी जो भी medical reports हैं that have to be secure. It should not be disclosed to unauthorized people, etc. So for me, confidentiality and privacy could be most important than anything else, right? So that is why it's very important for you to understand the nature of the services, the industry standards, the business objectives, legal requirements, and potential threats to the business operation. So these are some of the factors we need to consider when we are going to say, अच्छा, apart from this one, out of these 4, हमें क्या choose करना है और क्या choose नहीं करना as a starting point. Again, I'm repeating, you can go for everything as part of this additional criteria, or you can pick and choose based on the nature of the services and the customer expectations. अब वो एक क्वेश्चन था कि कोसो के साथ रिलेशनशिप क्या है? बेसिकली इसके अंदर जो सब कैटेगरीज हैं, they are coming from the COSO framework. उसकी again, yes, there are, you know, in COSO we do have principles. Here we do have subcategories. There's a mapping between that, but I'm not going into those details because then it becomes a little too much. But that's how those subcategories are basically mapped with your COSO framework that we have. Key considerations: identify the core requirements, primary security concerns of the organization, assess your regulatory compliance, consider your service commitment. As I said, if my promise to the customer is 99.59 or 69, I have to consider that service commitment, which means probably availability is the most important one for my business, right? So these are some of the considerations that we have to consider. Right. The next one is, I think I take the questions after this session, this topic by, sorry. The next one is, what is the relationship or how we can map SOC 2 with other frameworks? Over the last few years, one of the common questions that comes to us, okay, should we start with ISO 27001 or should we go for SOC 2 straight away? For me, if you ask me in my personal capacity, ISO 27001 basically is a management system. So it's a good starting point for the organization because you can build the governance, management, etc. And once you're ISO 27001 certified, plus it's a quick win, you can always build your SOC 2 requirements on top of that. So, but again, every organization has, I would say, a different way of taking it. But generally, 99% of the time, organizations start from ISO 27001 and then they go for SOC 2 compliance. So very quickly, what's the relationship between SOC 2 and ISO 27001? As you can see, both frameworks or standards are based on the risk. So they are based on the risk assessment approach. Of course, communication is the prime thing between the two standards or frameworks. Talks about the monitoring. Yes, you have to do the monitoring of the controls that you have implemented. It also talks about control activities, etc. Difference is ISO 27001 is globally accepted. SOC 2 is more of a US thing. So those organizations who have some sort of business in the US market, or they want to expand their business, or they want to explore US market, they prefer SOC 2. But again, as I said, I have even worked with the companies who are not US based. They have no relationship, no work in the US, but still they want to go for SOC 2 because it adds value to their information security program. SOC 2 aligns with US specific regulations. ISO is a pre-standard one. It's a global standard. As we all know, SOC 2 emphasizes specific criteria. ISO 27001 is a more generalized framework. इसीलिए ISO 27001 को हम information security management system कहते हैं, because it talks about governance, management, and your organizational controls, HR related controls, you have physical security controls, etc. So it's a very high-level management system, but SOC 2 is more on the 5 trust services criteria that we have seen. SOC 2 focuses on security, availability, PI, confidentiality, and privacy. 27001 emphasizes a risk-based approach to information security management system. So that's the main difference. And as I explained earlier, 27001 key, yes, you can go for the certification. आपको एक अच्छा सा certificate मिल जाएगा, which of course, as a business, you can put it in your marketing stuff. You can advertise on your website, on your social media कि ये we are ISO certified. SOC 2 के case में कोई certificate आपको नहीं मिलता है. So you can't really use it as a marketing tool, except that in your sales and marketing proposals आप mention कर सकते हो, yes, we are SOC 2 compliant, but उसका कोई certificate नहीं होता as such. Like for ISO 27001, you get the certificate and all those sort of things. उसके बाद difference between SOC 2 and NIST CSF. Again, NIST is a very much US thing, National Institute of Standards and Technology, which was established during Barack Obama time, back in 2010-11. Over the last few years, again, NIST has got a lot of popularity, not just in the US, but even outside of the US. So they have come up with their cybersecurity frameworks version 2.0, and they've got a lot of guidelines on different information security and data privacy stuff. So the things which are common between SOC 2 and NIST, of course, both are coming from US. That's the first common thing I would say. But uske alawa, if you see, both help to evaluate the security stance of the organization, assist in fulfilling compliance obligations, stress the significance of managing risk effectively, underscore the necessity of a clear security policy, encourage a culture of security, advocate for the establishment and maintenance of robust security programs. So these are some of the common things we have between SOC 2 and NIST cybersecurity framework. Difference क्या है दोनों में? SOC 2 is more of an audit and assurance, while NIST is a framework which is more for managing the risk. SOC 2 concentrates on system security and availability. NIST CSF prioritizes data security. SOC 2 consists of security controls, while NIST is more of principle guidance and best practices. SOC 2 is voluntary, while if you are in the US, and especially if you are part of federal agency in the US, you have to comply with NIST CSF, no exceptions. SOC 2 addresses IT infrastructure specifically, while NIST cybersecurity framework talks about the overall cybersecurity landscape. So that's a bit of a difference we have between SOC 2 and NIST. And then we also have something called NIST 853, again, another guideline from NIST. Common things pretty much the same. The differences are SOC 2 is an audit standard centered on trust services principle. 853 offer guidelines for securing systems and services. SOC 2 necessitates an independent third-party auditor report. NIST के लिए you don't need to have an external party to come and do the assessment for you. You can engage an external party, but it has not to be a specific like a CPA firm or things like that. So anyone who is who has the expertise and has the knowledge and experience to work on this 853, they can come and they can do an assessment for you and they can issue a report for you. But for SOC 2, of course, you have to engage an external CPA accredited firm to come and do a assessment for you. SOC 2 addresses data security at rest and in transit, while NIST 853 talks about data security in all districts, while in rest, transit, or in use as well. So that's the difference we have between SOC 2 and NIST 853. I take a pause here. I take few questions from the chat. Let's see what we have got in here. The first one is, any brief good read for SOC 2? Yes, as I said, starting point is up is AICPA की website पे जाएं. You should be able to see the framework over there. उसके अलावा internet भरा हुआ है SOC 2 से, so you can get as much information as you can from the internet. Second question is there any level of maturity also assessed in it, just like CMMI or other frameworks? What makes SOC 2 specific for service organization? First of all, it's not for service organizations. As I said, any organization who is managing or who feels that they are into information security, they can go for it. So it's not specific to service organizations, I would say. Number two, is there any level of maturity also assessed in it? Yes and no. So it's not a mandatory thing, but when we do our compliance assessment or even from an implementation standpoint, we need to make sure the controls are effective. The reason being the report writing. Report writing की we have very specific requirements, जो कि मैं आपको इस section के अंदर बताऊंगा भी कि especially for SOC 2 type 1 and type 2, these are two different reports we have. So we have for type 2 report, which is the most, I would say, accepted one in the industry. You have to maintain the controls and the effectiveness for X amount of time. So that is where the maturity basically comes into that as well. But directly, AICP or SOC 2 doesn't say it has to be level 4 or level 3 as per CMMI ratings. As such कोई requirement नहीं है उनकी. By service organization, I thought it would be IT services organization, but from one of your examples, it looks like any service organization will provide any type of services to customer is included in. Yes, exactly. So anyone who is managing the data, basically, मैंने आपको hospitals के example दी, आपके banks आ जाते हैं, आपके जो SaaS products हैं वो सब इसमें आ जाते हैं, आपकी telecom industry आ जाती है, आपके data centers इसमें आ जाते हैं. So anyone basically who is managing or who is getting customer data, processing customer information, collecting personal information, they all fall under the scope of SOC 2. Please mention the website again. Uzma का question है website for what? I don't know. आप अगर AICPA का पूछेंगे आप AICPA की वेबसाइट पर जा सकती हैं. सिंपल आप सर्च कर सकती हैं. उसके बाद to find accurate criteria seems engagement of multiple departments like legal, regulatory, etc. Yes, absolutely. Again, depends on क्या कौन सा criteria choose कर रहे हैं. But for example, if you go for privacy, yes, you have to engage with the legal team of your business because they have to get involved. If you are going for processing integrity, again, you might have to engage with the legal team or the compliance team of your business. So just like ISO 27001, it's cross-functional within the business. Then there's a question from Arden. If we are already complying with 27001, does it mean that we are also complying for SOC2? No way. ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. ISO 27001 is a starting point. आपको वो foundations मिल जाती है वहां से to establish your information security program, but that doesn't mean you are 100% compliant with SOC2 requirements. क्योंकि SOC2 की, as I explained, they have their own specific requirements, categories and subcategories. तो chances are कि आपने एक business continuity plan को design किया हो, आपने एक disaster recovery plan भी design किया हो as part of your 27001, but then if you choose to go for availability criteria, they have their own very specific requirements from a SOC2 standpoint. तो वो basics आपको मिल जाती हैं ISO 27001 से, but then of course you have to build on top of that ISO 27001. It requires extensive work. I ask a question है. I don't know how to answer this, but it could be yes, it could be no, depending on again many factors जो हमने discuss किए. आपका scope क्या है, customer की requirements क्या है, आपकी अपनी team का size क्या है. So it could be yes and no, both. I would say it's very subjective to say if it requires extensive work, yes or no. So it's pretty subjective, I would say. Can we say SOC2 is not a security framework? It's more like an IT general controls. Hamid ka question hai. We can say that, but it's not just IT general controls. There are information security and data privacy controls, to be very specific. If you mean IT general controls like ITIN or COBIT, that is more of an IT general controls framework, जिसके अंदर वो release management की भी बात करेगा, आपसे exchange की भी बात करेगा, आपसे service request की भी. These criteria that you have seen, they are very specific to information security and data privacy, etc. But to some extent, of course, you would be talking about change management. Change management is also considered as an IT general control or a process. So you can say, yes, some things are coming from that, but if you really want to differentiate between IT general controls and SOC2, I would say SOC2 is purely on information security and data privacy. And it is not only for IT, basically, right? Agar privacy ke liye ja rahe, you have to bring other business departments and all that information in the scope. So it's not very specific to IT or IT general controls. Okay. Right, I think we have covered all the questions. Let's move on to our next topic. I try to wrap up in the next 10 minutes, and then, of course, if you have questions, you guys can drop your questions in the chat. The next one is the certification and report writing. So let's see what we have got in here. Normally, we follow a 4-step process. Again, this is not coming from SOC2. This is generally our approach as a business or as a consulting firm, or for that matter, any organization. अगर आपने खुद से भी SOC2 की preparation करनी है, generally you follow a 4-step process. जिसमें first of all, you have to define the scope and you have to do your gap assessment based on the scope which you have defined. You would identify based on the gap assessment, you will start implementing the controls, fixing your issues, etc. And then you will go fix SOC2 type 1 and SOC2 type 2 reports. So what is type 1 and type 2? Again, we are going to see that one. So this is basically a typical timeline. Just to give you an example, I added this as an example here. So for example, you start doing your gap assessment in January 2025. You took almost a month to do your gap assessment. ये आप internally खुद भी कर सकते हैं if you have got the right team and expertise, or you can engage a consulting firm like us who can do the gap assessment for you based on the scope जो भी हम define करेंगे. So once we have the gaps and issues in place, then we are going to fix those issues. So let's say it takes another 3 to 4 months to fix your gaps and trying to meet the requirements of the framework. Then once this is done, you can see we have got something called SOC2 type 1. This is your, so in SOC2, we have two types of reports. One is called type 1 and the other one is called type 2. दोनों में difference क्या है? Let me go to the difference first. SOC2 type 1 report, अच्छा एक चीज मैं पहले बता दूं, टाइप 1 हो या टाइप 2 हो, दिस इज ऑल डन बाय CPA accredited firms. So टाइप 1 रिपोर्ट आप खुद नहीं लिख सकते हो या मैं नहीं लिख सकता हूं if I'm not the right person to do that. So again, that report comes from the CPA accredited firm and their authorized auditors. Okay. Type 1 basically is a point in time report. इसको हम point in time report भी कहते हैं. What does that mean? That means कि मैंने यहाँ पे अपना gap assessment किया and I found gaps in my controls versus the requirement of SOC2. I took 3 to 4 months to fix those gaps and issues and uplifting my information security program. And once I'm done, I engage a CPA firm to come and do a point in time assessment. It's like a snapshot of that particular position. यहाँ पे, so that is called your SOC2 type 1. It's called a point in time report. It basically focuses on design and implementation. So we are not talking about the effectiveness. क्योंकि अभी मैंने effectiveness start नहीं किया. I didn't start measuring the performance of my SOC2 program. I just design, I develop the policies, I develop the procedures, and then I say, okay, चलो यार, let's do a type 1. ताकि मुझे थोड़ा सा confidence तो मिले कि I have done something, you know, in the last 3 to 4 months. So it focuses on design and implementation. अगर मैं इसको ISO की लैंग्वेज में बोलूं, this is called stage 1. So those of you who work with certification bodies, or those of you who have faced the auditors, or those people who have gone through the certification process of ISO 27001 or any ISO standard, your external audit is divided into stage 1 and stage 2, right? So this is stage 1, where we basically come and see if you have got the right policies, procedures, जो आपका scope है, जो services criteria आपने choose किया, are you meeting or have you got the right controls according to that criteria? Yes or no? यहाँ पे मैं आपसे effectiveness नहीं पूछूंगा, मैं आपसे control evidence नहीं लूंगा आपसे. So that is basically called your SOC2 type 1. It can take anything between 1 to 3 months, again depending on the 5 trust services criteria. अगर आपने 8 choose किया, of course the time would be different, but if you have chosen all the 5 trust services criteria, then of course the time frame would be different. But it could be anything between 1 to 3 months. And as I said, test of control results are not included. So it's similar to stage 1 of your ISO certification, where we generally come, we review the documentation, we see the framework, and focuses on the design of your information security program. So equivalent to that, in SOC2, we have something called type 1 assessment or type 2 report. But again, as I said, this is done by CPA accredited firm. So it's not like मैं या कोई भी आके करे. No, it has to be a person who is part and parcel of a CPA firm. So that is called your type 1. Now, once this is done, आपको थोड़ा सा confidence आया कि yes, you know, we have got our policies and procedures in place. ज़्यादा issues भी नहीं है, everything is good. Then you start implementing the controls here. So this is where you will start reflecting those policies in your systems, in your infrastructure, in your network, etc., just like we do with any, you know, information security program. And then we will do a SOC2 type 2 audit starting from October. SOC2 type 2 के लिए we generally need between 3 to 12 months of time basically. This is where your control effectiveness, operational effectiveness, evidence of the control, and to some extent, majority of those controls also come into picture. Okay, क्योंकि यहाँ पे we can go back to get the evidence up to 12 months, especially if you're already complying. If you're going to comply for the first time, as you can see here, we can go up to, we can get the evidence back from 6 to 9 months as well. So ऐसा नहीं जैसे अब ISO के केस में, for example, क्या होता है, if you are going to get certified for the first time, generally we get the evidence of the last 3 to 6 months. But once you become certified, and then you go for your surveillance audit and for your recertification, we can get the evidence from the last 12 months. For example, 27001 के case में, let's say I did your certification audit in October 2024. Your next audit is in October 2025. So when I will come next year in October 25, I can go back and ask you the evidence between November to October, 12 months ka period hota hai. Same is the case in SOC2 type 2 reporting as well. So because here we focus on the operational effectiveness, it includes the test of your control results, and it can take anything between 3 to 12 months, again, depending on the scope and the TSCs that you have chosen. So that's the difference we have between type 1 and type 2. Now I can see there's a question that just popped up. What's the can we go directly for SOC2 type 2? Yes, you can do that. That's not a big deal. But generally I have seen organizations where they go for SOC2 type 1 to get the confidence, as a starting point, as a quick win, to give management the confidence that yes, we have got onto that roadmap. You can go for SOC2 type 1, but otherwise you can go for type 2 as well. That's not a big deal. So that is just an example to show you. We start from the gap assessment, we fix those issues, we can go for SOC2 type 1, and then we start planning towards the end of the year, assuming we started in January. We do our audit field work, and then we come up with the report towards the end of the year. So it's a 12 months journey. Once you get compliant, then you have to maintain your program. Generally, every year organizations go for a reassessment, I would say. Between that, you can always do your spot checks. जैसे हम ISO के case में we do internal audits and walkthroughs and periodic inspections. You can do that internally as well. You can engage external firm who can come on a periodic basis, maybe once a month, twice a month, etc. You can engage vCISO, for example, who can come and who can make sure कि आपने जो भी controls implement किए हैं, you are maintaining those controls and you are maintaining your program. And then at the end of the year, again, you go for the reassessment. You can always extend the scope, just like in ISO 27001. You can always go extend, and you can increase as much as you can. SOC2 के case maybe you can always extend the scope. So for example, you start with one trust services criteria and later you want to bring another in the scope, you can always do that. So you can inform the companies and the assessors that our scope has changed and we have brought in another trust services criteria. Accordingly, your planning phase and auditing field work would change, but you can always play around with those DSCs as well. Okay, so this is just a quick difference. As I said, type 1 is about point in time. The service organization has recently made significant changes, and they want to get some sort of they want to get some sort of confidence that yes, we have started designing our information security program based on SOC2, so you can go for type 1. It's like a snapshot of your that point in time situation. Type 2 is where you had a non-running stable system capable of demonstrating the effectiveness. This is where your evidence and test results come into picture, and that can take anything between 6 months to 12 months as well. Okay. So that's the main difference, as I explained, or a comparison between type 1 reports and type 2 reports in SOC 2. Okay. Let me see some questions in the chat. So the first one is, it's a good idea to put questions in the chat. Yes, Shizak, I think that would be easy. Otherwise, we can have conflicts. So anyone who has the questions, please, guys, you can write in the chat. that means it will take 1 year to complete this framework implementation. ये ऐसा गनी का question है. When you say complete, if you mean getting the final report, yes. Especially if you're going for SOC2 Type 2, it's an year program to start with. But if you want to go for Type 1, it could be done in 3 to 4 months, depending on what you have already in place, plus आपका scope क्या है. So for Type 1, that's why, as I said, companies generally prefer to have a Type 1 report. They engage the CPA firms, giving do an assessment, share the report. But if you're planning to go for Type 2, that's the minimum time frame you need to have, which is 1 year. It could be more than that as well. अगर आपने implementation पे 9 महीने लेनी है, then of course, another 9 months or 6 months minimum, you have to maintain the controls and you have to measure the effectiveness. उसके बाद आप Type 2 के लिए engage करोगे. So minimum 1 year, but then it could be as much as possible, you know. Okay, can we directly go for Type 2? I think you many question answer. Yes and no, but generally, yes, you can, but you can always have some sort of quick win in the form of Type 1. Again, US, what's the footprint of SOC 2 controls implementation, especially in the Middle East region? Very good question, again. I would say it's not that bad in a sense that especially the companies who are ISO certified, they are looking for this one, they are exploring. Those organizations, again, yes, who don't have the business relationship in the US, they are saying, okay, acha hai, to what next? Kya kare iska? But then to improve the cyber program and the information security posture, organizations are exploring. Some organizations are going for this as well, because it basically helps you to improve the overall maturity of your information security within the business. But it's decent, I would say. बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है as such. Is there any expiry period of the report? That is generally issued for 1 year, Hamid. So that's why you can go for the reassessment every year. In ISMS, we also go for the audit for certification. What about the SOC 2? I think you may explain. I repeatedly said कि इसकी certification नहीं होगी. We just have these Type 1, Type 2 reports. तो आपको एक opinion report मिलेगी, but you don't get a physical certificate. Usma का question है, what documentation is required for SOC 2? No specific documentation. Again, policies, procedures, जैसे आपके ISO की होते हैं, depending on कि आपका what is your trust services criteria. And what sort of controls you are going to implement. Accordingly, you can have policies, procedures on that. SOC 2 Type 2 ke andar, we are more interested to have the evidence. That is more important. So, but to support that evidence, of course, you should have the relevant policies and procedures as well. But there's no fixed criteria as we have in ISO. Just ISO can look at you should have a risk management framework, or you should have an information security policy. यहाँ पे as such कोई fixed criteria नहीं है in terms of like there's no specific list of documents that is required. It all depends on what you are going to design as part of your SOC 2 requirements. Which particular tool you recommend to maintain and achieve compliance, i.e. Wanta? Any tool, Nawazish. I'm not a salesperson here for those companies, but there are many good tools. Wanta is good. I have seen Draga, that's another one. I can there's another one जो मेरी नजरों से गुजरा था. Up to you. Wanta is good. Draga is good. There are many other tools which you can explore as well. For privacy TSC, do we have to go in depth like conducting of the EPIS? Yes, absolutely. Because that's the requirement of the privacy part. I am an ISMS assessor, but I did not feel any major difference between ISMS and SOC 2. Rani, there are differences between SOC 2 and ISMS. I'm the ISMS assessor as well since 2013. Difference है. Major difference है सर इसकी रिपोर्ट राइटिंग में. आइजो की रिपोर्ट इसके सामने बच्चों वाली रिपोर्ट है. I'll be very honest. 2 घंटे में we can write ISO 27001 रिपोर्ट. SOC 2 की आप रिपोर्ट देखें और लिखें, it takes ages basically. That is why I'm sure आपको ISO 27001 के लिए you don't need this much of time for ISO 27001, but here we need time for report writing. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 weeks as well to write the report only. So differences are there, but from an assessment standpoint specifically, another major difference between ISO, what I personally feel is, for example, you are doing a control validation in ISO 27001, हम 2, 3, 4 sample pick करते हैं, we say, okay, चलो ठीक है, your control is effective. Here we have to go in more details. We have to pick the samples up, sometimes up to 25 to 30% of the population size as well to measure the effectiveness. For example, in 27001, let's say you are doing the audit of incident management and there are, let's say 1,000 incidents in the system. Maybe you will pick 2, 3, 4 samples. अच्छा एक high ticket देख लिया, is there any emergency or major incident happen? वो हम we pick 3, 4, 5 samples, maximum 6 ले लेंगे, 7 ले लेंगे. Here we have to go for 25 to 30% sampling in some cases. So it's way more than ISO 27001, but again, as I said, similarities are also there. Okay. I take this last question, then we move on to the last thing. So this session is very helpful. I just started a job in GRC. How can I learn more about risk assessment? I think that's a separate debate we can have. We can have maybe a separate session on risk assessment in the future, or maybe if Shazan Bhai can share some old videos, that could be helpful to understand the risk assessment part. Right. Right, so moving on to the very last thing, that was an overview basically of SOC2. What are the trust services criteria we have and how to do the report writing. The very last thing is, as our business, as Cyberverse, what is our roadmap if we go for SOC2 compliance and implementation services? Again, we are not CPA accredited firm, so we can't do the report writing, but yes, we do readiness assessments, gap assessments, spot checks, etc. That is something we definitely do as part of our consulting and advisory services. So we generally follow again a similar roadmap, which is a 4-step process starting from the scope. So first we have to establish the scope based on the 5 trust services criteria that we discussed. We do a readiness assessment, जिसको आप gap assessment का नाम भी दे सकते हो. Then we go for the remediation. This is where we start building and fixing your gaps based on the requirements. We do internal audits and spot checks. Even before type 1 report. So even before type 1, to give the confidence to the customer that yes, you are ready for SOC 2 type 1, we also do internal audits and spot checks. And then during the last phase, of course, we help them to connect with the CPA accredited firms. So we have got partnerships where we can connect the customer with those CPA firms. Of course, the billing and everything happens between the two organizations, but we just help them to go and start building that relationship. And also in that last SOC 2 type 2 audit process, we help the customer, and if they need any sort of assistance in terms of evidence gathering or documentation, etc. So this is where we also help them to we assist the organization. So that's pretty much the roadmap that we also follow. Right. Now the very last thing, Shazak bhai, we are almost done. Any questions, guys, before we go for a very exclusive offer that we have for the participants who are joining us today? Any questions on SOC 2? I just give you another 2 minutes. Can we share the SOC 2 type 1 or type 2 report to auditors or third party or NDA is required? Abdul Kadir ka question. I don't know if it's the same Abdul Kadir which I know, but yes, you can share type 1 and type 2 reports. Exactly, this is what we said, but generally we always sign the NDA. And type 1, type 2 reports are not publicly available. If you want to make your report public, you have to go for SOC 3. SOC 3 is the next level of SOC 2. So आपके controls, everything is the same. SOC 3 is basically an extracted version of your SOC 2 reports. क्योंकि SOC2 की reports, those of you who might have seen of AWS or Microsoft, इन vendors की आपने शायद report देखी हो, they are very, very extensive. Sometimes we have to put the screenshots and too much information in that. SOC3 is an extracted publicly related information, which is a shorter version of your report, which you can make it public. You can even publish on your website. But for type 1 and type 2 report, yes, generally you can only share with your customers, with your auditors, and of course, you always have those non-disclosure agreements with your customers, auditors, and even with your service providers. Can we be part of a CPA if we are out of USA? How? Yes, exactly. So you can, I don't know in which country you are in, but you can contact the CPA firms in your specific country or even outside of country. It's not necessary कि आप अगर पाकिस्तान में आपने पाकिस्तान की CPA firm से ही contact करना है. You can get in touch with any CPA accredited firm. If they're interested to take you on board, you can be part of that. So it's not necessary that you have to be in the US, because AICPA has presence, or CPA firms are present across the globe. So you can get in touch with any CPA firm. If a company is ISO certified, can they be used as a basis for SOC2 reports? And what is the probability the same company will get a positive SOC2 report? SOC2 report ke under, so yes, that ISO report or ISO policies and procedures would be the basis to bring your SOC2. But this external assessor is not going to write the report only based on the findings of ISO 27001 report. As I said, for SOC2, they have to there's a different process. There's a different way of writing the report as well. There's a very, very strict criteria of writing SOC2 report. For ISO 27001, every certification body has their own template. But for SOC2 reports, it has a very specific format of report writing. I think there are only 4 sections in that report. Just we have to write the executive summary. Then there's a section where the auditors will write their opinions and conclusions, etc. So it is, you can't write a SOC2 report only based on ISO 27001 report.
अच्छा, मुझे थोड़ी सी कंफ्यूजन है स्कोपिंग के अंदर. फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर फॉर एग्जांपल हम एक प्रोडक्ट की SOC2 रिपोर्ट के लिए जाते हैं, असेसमेंट के लिए जाते हैं, तो और वो शेयर्ड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मॉडल है, क्लाउड पे होस्टेड है, और शेयर्ड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मॉडल की वजह से वो कैसे हम बेसिकली ट्रांसफर किसी कंट्रोल को कैसे कर रहे होंगे, रिक्वायरमेंट को किस कंट्रोल को खुद इंप्लीमेंट कर रहे होंगे, ठीक है, SaaS बेस्ड मतलब डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव में, तो इसको कैसे थोड़ा सा मैनेज करेंगे स्कोपिंग के पर्सपेक्टिव में?
That's where you have those different subcategories in each of the criteria, basically. So when you go for the subcategories and you see the controls, then you identify the responsibilities. Same concept जैसे हम ISO में use करते हैं, जैसे physical security. I've got an office, but there is a leased office, ठीक है? जो physical controls हैं, physical access है, जो आपके water sprinklers हैं, smoke detectors हैं, that is managed by the building management. But मैंने क्या किया हुआ है? So we in risk management we call it as a risk transfer option, right? हम risk treatment में we basically have transferred the risk to the building management. So वही thought process यहाँ पे भी use होगा. You have to identify the shared responsibility. You have to come up with the responsibility matrix, and accordingly, then basically you go for it. And where required, of course, you will get that information from your cloud service providers as well. Right. So, Shizak bhai, very quickly, I'm going to wrap up the session now. Before we wrap up the session, just to give you an idea, we are running our own SOC2 training program, which is going to start next month, as I said. So we do offer training programs under the umbrella of PCB. It's a 4-day training program, which is called Lead SOC2 Analyst. It's going to start on the 16th of November. It's a weekend training program. Generally, हम Gispp के साथ हमने जितने भी sessions किए, we do it on Saturdays and Sundays, क्योंकि वो weekend होगा mostly, and people can easily attend the training programs. So it's a 4-day training program, which is going to start next month. Now, in the market, the current price if you see, first of all, not too many organizations are offering SOC2 training program. It's an accredited program, but not too many organizations are offering at this point in time. But the ones who are offering, they are offering this course at the starting price of $1,500 US. But we are not offering this to $1,500 to our Gispp members. We are not doing it even at $1,000. As Shizak bhai said in the opening note, हमने जब भी Gispp के साथ किया है, you know, when we started doing training with Gispp like 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, Shizak bhai की बड़ी clear instructions कहीं कि यार we have to do it on a cost-to-cost basis, because 95% of the time people are paying from their own, you know, expenses and from their own savings. So yes, if it's a public, if it's a public one, or if it's for the organization, of course the rates are different. But if anyone is coming from Gispp in his or her personal capacity, then Shizak bhai had very clear instructions कि यार जितनी भी हम cost कम कर सकते हैं, make it try, you know, try to do it on a cost-to-cost basis. और उसी का शायद I think I would say the benefit is that we have got more than 100 participants and I'm doing a training in the last 4 or 5 years. शायद इससे भी ज़्यादा होंगे. I can check my records, but it's more than 100 that we have trained in Gispp, and alhamdulillah, the response is really good. So right now we are offering it like $749 US, not Australian dollars or Singapore dollars. And this is inclusive of everything. And when I say everything means you will have a live instructor-based training program, which I'll be doing the training myself, inshallah. You will receive the official training materials from PECB, number 1. Number 2, you will receive your course completion certificate with 31 CPEs, जिसको आप utilize कर सकते हैं अपनी बाकी certifications के लिए. You will receive exam voucher, which is valid for 2 attempts. In case if you miss the exam in the first attempt, or if you don't pass in the first attempt, the second attempt is absolutely free of cost. And then the final certification fee. जैसे ISACA या IAC2 के case में, once you pass, you have to apply for the certificate, and there's a fee behind that again. So everything is combined into one single price, which is $749. On top of that, only for Gispp members, we are offering them to pay in 3 installments. So you don't have to pay the whole amount in advance. You can start with 30%. And again, this is something which is really appreciated in the last couple of years. We just want to make sure that people should invest. Trust me, I'm not going to get much out of this one, but the whole idea is in case if somebody is interested to uplift his knowledge, skill, experience, and expertise and want to get knowledge, amount should not be a showstopper. So you can pay in 3 installments as well. So there's like 30% at the start of registration, 30% on the first day, 40% or 30%, whatever is on the last day, or even once you pass the exam, you can pay that as well. हम PECB को upfront pay करते हैं, but this is just to facilitate the Gispp family. If anybody wants to go for the installment, you can pay in installments as well. This is the code you want to share, because generally WhatsApp जो है मैं ज़्यादा use नहीं कर रहा हूँ. We have a social media team who puts all these advertisements. So if by chance you get in touch with them, you should share this code in case if you're interested to go for the training. Again, as I said, it's going to start next month. So those of you who are interested to learn more about SOC2, uske andar, yes, we'll be talking about each and every control. Very, very comprehensive training program. 4 days ka program hai, jiske andar we go through all the mandatory services criteria. We have the subcategories, unki mapping, unki details, how you can implement each and every control. So it's a very, very comprehensive program, which will be inshallah offering next month. So in case if you're interested to register, you can use this code to get this price. अगर आप code share नहीं करोगे, so you would be falling somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. So in case if you're interested, you can take the opportunity of this price plus just use this code and share it with the social media team when you want to register for the training program. That's all from my side. Thank you very much, everyone. I took almost 1.5 hours, but I think it was a good starting point. Shizak bhai, over to you if you want to add any last minute thing.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, बहुत मजा आया, बहुत अच्छा सेशन था माशाल्लाह। एंड आई एम
Thank you.
वेरी हैप्पी कि मैंने एक्चुअली इसको बाय कर लिया था जूम को।
40
अदरवाइज
मिनट्स में
अब आपने तो कहा था 1 आवर करेंगे, लेकिन तो ये 1 आवर एंड 28 मिनट्स हमने किया ऑलमोस्ट। और
सर वो
तो
ट्रेनिंग बैकग्राउंड ऐसी है कि when I start
सबसे
talking
मजे की बात है अदनान भाई, आपने मुझे कहा था, कल कहा था कि टाइम तो बहुत कम है, अभी एक दिन है सिर्फ, तो देखें आप 50+ लोग आए हैं। और
हाँ जी
ऑलमोस्ट
सर।
एंड तक आप अभी भी आप देखें, अभी भी आपके पास 37 है, मतलब 48 तक अभी तक थे, थोड़ी देर पहले तक ना। तो इतना देर तक
नहीं
लोग
सर,
रहते नहीं है, रिटेंशन बहुत अच्छी थी माशाल्लाह इसकी। इट
थैंक यू
वाज
वेरी मच।
वेरी नाइस। तो बड़ा मजा आया कि जी वो अच्छा लगा। तो थैंक यू सर, हमने फिर से स्टार्ट किया और वी हैड अ गुड स्टार्ट, आई विल से वी हैड अ वेरी वेरी गुड स्टार्ट विद 50+
इंशाल्लाह।
पीपल।
यस।
सो अभी भी और भी लोग अब इंटरेस्टेड हो रहे हैं, तो मुझे मैसेज आ रहे हैं कि जी हम भी चाहते हैं नया सेशन करना, तो हम वो भी करेंगे। फॉर एवरीबॉडी जो आए थे, अगर आपको रिकॉर्डिंग चाहिए होगी तो हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल इसको सब्सक्राइब कर लें, ठीक है। और वो जो कहते हैं ना, बेल आइकन पे क्लिक कर लें। खैर, तो इवेंचुअली मैं
सब्सक्राइब
इसको
शेयर
अपलोड
एंड
कर
बेल
दूंगा।
आइकॉन।
मैं इसको अपलोड करूंगा तो आपको नोटिफिकेशन आ जाएगा इंशाल्लाह। और इसके अलावा भी हमने बहुत कुछ पहले भी किया हुआ है, तो वो आप जाके देख सकते हो। सीसीएसपी के पूरे सेशंस पढ़े हैं वहाँ पे, सीसा के पढ़े हैं, सीएसएसपी के पढ़े हैं, बहुत से पढ़े हुए हैं, सीरीज के पढ़े हुए हैं, बहुत से सेशंस। अच्छा, ऑल इज वेरी गुड नॉलेज, तो आप जाए इंशाल्लाह उसको देखें, जो लोग नए मेंबर्स हैं, जो पहली दफा आए हैं। अदनान भाई, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया दोबारा से, आपका बहुत मजा आया। तो आई होप
थैंक यू
हम
वेरी मच सर भाई।
दोबारा आपको फिर से करेंगे तंग किसी और चीज पे भी
सर
इंशाल्लाह।
इंशाल्लाह,
ठीक
इंशाल्लाह
है।
सर।
हाँ।